So on to India, part 4. We're going to talk about Buddhism, the aspects of Buddhism, and then we'll go into the final 2 emperors and empires of India. So Buddhism basically was started by a guy named Gautama. You can skip his first name because it's really long and complicated and nobody knows how to say it. Eventually he becomes Buddha. He was a prince who saw suffering around him and wanted to change it, so he left the palace and basically spent the rest of his life in suffering, trying to figure out how to end suffering. So he becomes Buddha. And basically, guys, Buddhism is the same as Hinduism. It's more of a lifestyle than what people would call a religion. The basic beliefs of Buddhism are essentially nirvana, which is basically that you are pursuing rebirth. And if you reach nirvana, you have reached like the epitome of your life. Through the Eightfold Path is how you reach nirvana, and they basically believe that you have to do a bunch of things right. You have to, speak right and act right and have the right life and have the right effort and have the right mind and thoughts, and basically, similar to Hinduism, you have to live basically a perfect life. They also believe in reincarnation, like Hinduism, but which basically is rebirth to reach nirvana. So in your process of reaching nirvana, you are reborn multiple times. And depending how good you are reborn less times, or you're reborn as a better thing. Their followers, basically, they practice meditation. They believe basically in suffering and denying yourself. They are very self-disciplined, and they basically believe in moral virtue. The most famous picture of Buddhist monks is usually that they wear orange gowns and they usually shave their head and they walk around barefoot, which isn't always accurate and true, but that's what they're probably known for. Today they have more than 500 million followers, and they are the 4th largest religion in the world. So Buddhism is going to come around with the Gupta Empire, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But before the Gupta Empire is the Maurya Empire. Guys, there's a cricket in my house. Okay. It's the Maurya Empire. The first emperor's name is Gupta. He was the first king. Obviously, his name sounds like Gupta. His grandson is going to start the Gupta Empire over here in a little bit. But basically, he was the first king. He unifies all of North India, which is kind of a big deal because North India is not really unified at this point. And he has a large military. And other than that, he's really not too important. His grandson, though, in 269 BC, his name is Osaka, and he becomes king, and he really does some pretty important things in terms of India. He promotes religious tolerance, which basically means to be accepting of different kinds of religions. This is the first empire in history to do this. Nobody else has ever done this before, and so he's definitely an exception to the rule. He establishes Buddhism. He basically practices peace to all beings, meaning he was relatively peaceful in his mind, although he was a very powerful king, and he expanded his empire a lot. So in some ways he was peaceful, in other ways he was not. He built a pretty extensive road system in India. He also built a very large empire. He was really loved by people, and when he died in 232, it was actually caused a lot of chaos. So after about 500 years of chaos and turmoil, you have the Gupta Empire, which is your last empire. Basically, the first king of the Gupta is Chandragupta I. He becomes king in 321 or 320. And he expands the empire for about 40 years. So for 40 years, he's taking over other kingdoms. He has a strong military. Most people who live in the kingdom, though, are farmers. They're not military people. And this society is patriarchal, meaning that the oldest man in the family is responsible for taking care of and leading the family. The Gupta is probably the most successful empire for India. They aren't going to get much more successful than this because they kind of go downhill from here. But basically, they did a lot of things. They promote a lot of literature, drama, poetry that is still around today. They established a very large trading network, and in fact, over here you can see it says they trade on the Silk Road. They found out about China's Silk Road and the connection to Europe, and then they started using the connection to Europe to sell their own stuff. They also became very advanced with ships. They also used astronomy, which is the study of stars, if you don't know what that is. And through